welcome to the interns, the professors, the presenters, and the Allentown community to PNLV's Health Equity Fellowship. I want to start off by thanking the Dorothy Ryder Pool Healthcare Trust and the Ryder Pool Foundation for their support of this program and their ongoing contribution over many years to health equity across our community. The PNLV Health Equity Fellowship is centered in the idea that wellness is a basic human right and that everyone is worthy of a fair and just opportunity to be as healthy as possible. We recognize that there are locally significant obstacles to optimum health, such as racism, power imbalances, and poverty. These oppressive factors, as well as inequities across the social determinants of health, substantially and disparately impact the health and life outcomes of marginalized and vulnerable communities. This is the third of 8 exciting and informative webinars. Each webinar will have 2 presenters and cover key determinants of health, social determinants of health. The webinars will last for about an hour and a half. The presentations will be followed by 30 minutes of Q&A, and the webinars will be recorded and available for you to review. Our presenters are both experts in their field and leaders and representatives of our community, and they will share with you the inequities, the challenges, and the opportunities in our health system. And you'll be assigned some pre-work to do before each webinar for the interns. I remind you today, as on every Monday webinar, that knowledge is power. Our third webinar topic for today is addiction, recovery, and substance abuse. And our presenters are Yamelisa Taveras and Jose Rivera. I'd also like to, as you've been introduced to Ola Anawale, she is our Health Equity Fellowship Project Director, and she is webinar manager and will be facilitating the Q&A. And I want to just read you a little bit from the bios of our 2 presenters. So I'm going to start with Yamelisa. Yamelisa is a bilingual master's level Pennsylvania board certified alcohol and drug counselor. Her career began soon after her graduation from DeSales University and completion of her AmeriCorps Vista assignment at the Caring Place in Allentown. Over the past 14 years, Yamelisa has grown as an individual and a professional in the field of substance use and recovery. She began as an associate counselor and today holds the position of project director at her private practice Counseling Solutions of the Lehigh Valley, providing prevention education and early intervention services to Allentown School District students, grades K-12, and as a BHA caseworker for LVHN. As patients seek to enter recovery, medically assisted treatment, and behavioral health services, her expertise in the field facilitates treatment access to best meet their needs. Through her career, she partnered with fellow colleague Cindy Bello to create the Hispanic Recovery Program at Mid-Atlantic Rehabilitation Services and created the Prevention 101 kits, which provide essential information and safety items for individuals in active use. From an early age, her dedication to helping the underserved and marginalized populations has been evident and is still today. In her free time, she is dedicated to giving a voice to those silenced by oppression every day through her nonprofit organization, the Unidos Foundation. Thank you for being here, Yamelisa. And now I want to go to Jose. Jose Rivera is the king of survival, mislabeled as only a Latin king. Born in Spanish Harlem in the 1970s, the deck was stacked against him. New York City in the 80s was devastated by the crack epidemic, Jose's mother tried to keep him one step ahead of despair by moving out of Spanish Harlem to Allentown. Poverty, unfortunately, does not have a zip code. Allentown was no different, and it was not a life Jose was willing to accept. Opportunity did not come easily, and the streets came calling. Being an expert street pharmacist allowed Jose to rise quickly, but everything came with a price. Multiple stabbings, gunshot wounds, and jail sentences took everything from Jose except life and family. After 14 years in prison, Jose decided to own his own future. Still a Latin king, he decided to forge a new path. Jose has been in recovery since 2012, and now, as a community outreach volunteer for Promise Neighborhoods, Lehigh Valley, Jose is giving back to the community he helped to destroy. He recently graduated from Lehigh Carbon Community College with an associate's degree in business management and is now applying to Muhlenberg College to get a bachelor's degree in business management. Jose was recently accepted into the Real Estate Lab, a real estate entrepreneurship program developed by developer J.B. Riley. Jose plans to further his education in hopes of ensuring that low-income housing remains affordable, reinvesting in his community, and ensuring that those who live in the community are part of the decision-making processes that affect their lives. Mr. Rivera is proof of what's possible when street smarts are combined with opportunity and hope. Thank you for sharing your story, Jose, and thank you for being here. Okay, so you all can start.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And, you know, I know my story. So when I heard it, it's like, oh, yeah, all that. And then I'm hearing Jose's and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing to hear. You know, as you shared, being in the field of substance use and recovery for 14 years, I get to watch it hands-on, but not firsthand. And I recognize that. And, you know, my teachers are Jose. You know, and the Jose's that I have had the pleasure to know through my time in substance use counseling and all the different levels of it. So it's just beautiful to be able to have this conversation today, and I am so grateful to you know, to have this opportunity. So Jose, for you also, thank you. Did you want to say some words? No? He's shy, guys. He's shy, but definitely, you know, as today goes on for the next hour or so, we're going to be discussing, you know, the inequities that happen, whether it's to access treatment or, you know, the things that occur in our, you know, in our city and in the Valley as a whole. So as you know, as we get into the information, if anyone has questions, please write them down, send them into the chat, put it in the Q&A so that we can address them at the end of the presentation today. Today may be a little bit different than some of you have seen over the past couple of weeks. This is the third week, as Julie shared, and today's more of an open discussion. I'll share some information about being a professional in the substance use field, you know, some statistics that are important to keep in mind. However, is more about the story, you know, the reality of it all, and how to really come out of that triumphant as we've been able to hear, you know, Jose's story. So, you know, additional to what Julie said, and I had already forgotten what my bio sounded like when she was reading it. And it's like, oh, I don't have anything else to say. But the reality is, you know, listening to Jose's story, it just reminds me that I had a similar upbringing when it comes to how we ended up here in Allentown. I was 12 when my mother decided, you know what, we cannot stay in the Bronx. We lived in Hunts Point, a very unsafe neighborhood for many. And then what most people there call home, and you just become accustomed to the realities of living in that environment, you know, police brutality and violence and fights and arguments and drug use and drug trafficking and all of it, all of the different things that happen. But then also what gets forgotten and what doesn't get translated is a sense of belonging that occurs through all of this. It's the closeness of families, the fact that, you know, maybe two families may share an apartment, but you become used to that. And it's beautiful. It's, you know, holidays are different. The vibe is different. The music, the food, all the experiences are lived very, very differently. And they're beautiful in their own way. So it's not all negative, and we need to recognize that too. So, you know, as far as substance use and us getting into, you know, the details of that, and I hope that all of you got to watch the 13th, the movie that was shared, the link, you know, the pre-work that was sent to all of you, because we're going to touch on some of those details. And as Jose and I get into the discussion, you'll be able to hear firsthand what those things that maybe you hear in a documentary, maybe you hear in some sort of video or clip on YouTube or on Facebook, and you're like, that can't be true. And then you have someone that lived it firsthand. So, you know, in the United States, in just 2017, so this is just 3 years ago, we're talking 70,000 or over 70,000 overdoses in the US alone. And 47,600 of those were related to opiate use. And this transition has come very rapidly if you ask anyone working these numbers. However, Jose and I can both tell you that didn't happen overnight. The reality with opiate use disorder and any substance use disorder, it has been going on for a very, very long time. We're talking at the end of the war, how they were just being handed out like Skittles, and the soldiers coming back missing limbs and expected to just cope with the pain. And with that came, you know, a lot of substances that were prescribed and handed out. So it's not new. However, what has changed is who it's affecting. And when our people, and when we say our people, we mean people of color, we're talking about Hispanics, Latinos, Blacks, Browns. When we were being affected, it was criminal. It was, you know, they are criminals, they are abusing substances, they need to go to jail. And now, you know, the cousins and the sons and daughters of developers and lawyers and doctors are now being affected. And somehow in the last 5 years, it's a problem. It's a problem, and it's a disease, and it needs to be addressed, and then help needs to, you know, come, and money needs to be poured into programs, and we need to make access to treatment available for all. So comes the part that Jose and I know firsthand. Treatment for all is not truly for all. There are many inequities that occur through the system. You know, in the last couple of years, and what has happened is that the Department of Human Services, the U.S. Department of Human Services, came up with 5 priorities that they were, of the way that they were going to address the opiate use disorder and the opiate epidemic, as they have now called it. And one of them was to improve access to treatment and recovery services. The second one was to promote the use of overdose reversing drugs such as Narcan. Third, let me see, as people are coming in, are you guys being muted? Okay. So the third is strengthening our understanding of the epidemic through better public health surveillance. So it's having more discussions, it's someone keeping track, it's keeping a log of where these overdoses are happening, how are, you know, the individuals getting access to the drugs, etc., and kind of just learning from it. And number 4, providing support and cutting edge research on pain and addiction. So understanding that a lot of the substance use that we see now, and those that are struggling with dependence, started as a prescription because of an injury or being, a tooth got pulled or whatever that, that may have occurred. But it was not, they went out and copped drugs. They received a prescription from the doctor, then the doctor decided to discontinue their prescription without providing enough information. And even in the forefront, providing information regarding, the likelihood of dependence that all of these prescriptions may have. And then number 5, advancing better practices for pain management. So as all of these wonderful, go ahead, Jose. Go ahead before I get into
I noticed in them 5, no one talks about prevention. Everything is treatment, 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 treatment. They don't want to stop it because they make more money on the end of treatment than preventing it. You gave me 5 ideas that they have, but none of them mention how do we prevent it. And that's the biggest problem right here, because if you're going to continue to treat it, it's going to continue to grow. Mm-hmm. And as long as they're making money off the back end, which is our end, they're going to continue to do that. And for years, everyone's always talked about you prevent it by starting with the kids. You talk to the kid, you come. And everyone's idea is talk to them in high school. Sorry, high school's too late. Middle school, they already started. We have to talk to these kids in the 3rd and 4th grades and show them what it is. And stop keeping these kids in a bubble and like they don't need to be exposed to that. Yes, they need to be exposed to that because they've been exposed to it. This is their neighborhoods. And everyone's, their welfare. No, their welfare is we need the help now. But everyone's on treatment. No one's talking prevention. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, and thank you. And that's so important because that's where the disparities begin. When I started the counseling solutions of the Lehigh Valley, and Julie mentioned, we are servicing children kinder all the way through 12th grade. The reality is that when you go into, for example, us, we provide most of our services at Casa Guadalupe here in Allentown. And when you open a discussion with a kindergartner, you're talking 5 years old, and you present to them information regarding wine or beer or cigarettes, they've already seen it. Mm-hmm. They've already heard it. It happens every single day. When we were discussing, and we brought in props for the older children, not necessarily the younger ones. But as we were having the discussion about hookah, they were like, oh yeah, I've seen it. My mom, my dad, my cousin, my everyone. So it is not new information. Many parents, and not the parents that we service because they know the reality. But many of the parents, when I introduce the programs that we're providing, their question is always, well, wouldn't by talking to them about it, aren't you going to raise the curiosity of them trying it? The answer is no. The answer is no. This is information. Just like when it comes to any type of preventive information, you need to provide the children with information discussing, what it is, how it can affect you, and then what are the alternatives to that. So it's not just, hey, here's cocaine, here's alcohol, here's, marijuana, and leaving them at that. If you're going to provide the service, provide them with alternatives and options for them to know how to, make that shift. Because it's not always just about, have the discussion of the drugs and leave it at that. Is also providing the options that they deserve to have. So the disparities, so the 5 that I mentioned, the reality is that not one, as Jose said, speaks on the prevention piece. This is all how to address the problem that's already existing, which is great. But then comes the other piece. None of those have become available or truly available for the underserved and the minority populations. When we go into Spanish-speaking individuals and individuals that are uninsured, most of us do not have any one of those accessible to us. It's very difficult when you come into the country and, individuals see you as immigrant, as an alien, as an outsider, as, undocumented, whatever label they want to place. Because as soon as you get into this country, there's always a label that goes with you. In our countries in Latin America, none of us walk around like I'm Hispanic. I'm Latino. No, you are you. They call you by your name. It's, this whole label of being Black, being Asian, being white, being Hispanic. this is here. This was made for statistics, for them to be able to track us in different ways and manage their money in different ways. So when it comes to accessing treatment, very few programs in our area provide treatment in Spanish. And those that do are not doing a very good job. So that's why, you know, in the bio was mentioned that myself and my colleague, Cindy Bello, we, with the, of course, the support of Mid-Atlantic Rehabilitation Services, we initiated the Hispanic Recovery Program. Now, that was 3 years ago, and it has been amazing. It's still successful. It's still running as of today. There are individuals, family therapy, group sessions, both outpatient and intensive outpatient, depending on the need of the individuals. But when it comes to one of our clients needing a higher level of care, very few, and when I say very few, I mean maybe one, that provides true treatment at the inpatient level in Spanish, and it's only for males. We struggle very much with any of our patients that are Spanish-speaking females. And then once you're in, culturally, most of it is not truly addressed. The program was created, and, you know, we didn't call it, and we don't call it the Spanish track, because it's not about language. When it comes to addressing the needs of a population, you need to learn the culture, and you need to address a lot of the cultural needs. So that's, you know, something to definitely keep in mind. And then also is, you know, the disparities that occur with accessing quality treatment. So again, some of the programs may provide treatment for, you know, all of us, and they're open their doors for everyone that needs treatment. However, many of us don't have childcare. And when I say us, I mean in general, the population of Allentown. We struggle with income, we struggle with childcare, we struggle with food security, we struggle with a lot of different things. And then you're expected to be in treatment between 9 and 15 hours a week. How is that realistic for someone that needs to work 60 hours or maybe even 80 hours a week to be able to feed their family and afford their rent? So access to treatment is still not across the board fair. And, you know, and that also needs to be understood. So now, you know, I wanted to give some of that information so that you guys, you know, if you had any questions, like I said, as questions come up, please send them in. And I do see that some of those were sent in. But I did want to ask, you know, and you guys are probably curious too, Jose, can you share with us just a little bit, you know, and we heard your bio, we heard, you know, how that transition was, the things that you had to do really to survive in many ways. But what could have been different?
What could have been different? Support and education system. Because the first thing that was told to me, and I say taught to me because they told me at an early age that my family should save money to bail me out, not to send me further in college. That it was easier to save for bail money than it was to save for higher education. So, and I was an honor roll student all the way through high school. I was in sports. I was no dummy. I just did dumb things because that's what we did. That was our neighborhood. And I'm not going to say everyone in my neighborhood didn't succeed. We have some success stories out the neighborhood, but 2 out of 10 is not a good enough success story. And when you continue back in the 80s to push people to do labor jobs and not educate them to do executive jobs, I have a problem with that. Because they always said, oh, you can be a carpenter, you can be a landscaper, you could be a mechanic. It's like, I don't want to do that. They never said I could be a boss. They never said I could run my own company. Those weren't the options. It was both tech and pick up a trade. So for me, like, I had a full ride to Lehigh University. I messed that up because of the decisions I made. And people always ask, do I regret my decisions? And I tell everybody no, because that's what made me who I am. It took me a lot longer to get here, but I got here. And it was different. Like, when I say my community, I don't mean brown and black. I mean all low income, because everybody's a low income. It's just a different label, because when we say browns and blacks are low income, they say we're lazy. But when a white person says they're low income, they fell on hard times. And it's just a big wordplay with people. And it's, how do you help one without helping the others? If we're all struggling, we're all struggling. And like, it was easier for me to sell drugs. I was fascinated with it. I'm good with numbers. I'm good with management. I'm good of sewing holes in my pockets that way the money don't fall out. I was always a great provider, but I never held on to everything, because everything you get dirty, you lose. And right now I live in a recovery house. And right now, well, I'm gonna say my community, I'm talking about the recovery community, are one of the hardest hits right now during this COVID. There are suicides and more relapse than ever before, because access to what we need was shut down. And like it took almost a month for us to get our Zoom meeting, for us to do our NAA. We were still, and stand still for us. And that's not good, because I tell everyone, I'm not scared of dying. I'm scared of not living. And not living for me is going back to prison. And the whole world is passing me by, and I'm standing in one spot in the mountains of Pennsylvania, and I have no idea what's going on.
So what did quarantine do for that?
Well, like I said, the recovery community, it hurt us. Because one thing, isolation is the worst thing for us. And we basically isolated. We were just left on the island without support. What helped me is, I'm here at Promise every day. I don't care what anyone says about community college. It's magnificent. They helped me so much. Even though I couldn't get the services I needed, they provided me with whatever I needed. All I had to do is hit them up, and they were there for me. Like today, took 4 days to finish my application to Muhlenberg, because some of the questions I didn't know how to answer. So the head advisor, Dr. Dorothy Collins from L-Tri-C, helped me fill that out over the phone. So it's like, I can always call them when I need help. And I'm gonna need a lot of help. And like I said in my interview with CNN, COVID was a blessing for me, because it stopped the rest of the world and it gave me an opportunity to catch up a little bit. I don't know this technology stuff, and I really am uncomfortable with it. But you give me pencil and paper and a book, I'll figure anything out. But you give me this computer and try to find stuff, and I feel like it works against me because I don't know how to use it. But I'm grateful for the team I have around me, because they do not allow me to fail. And if we had more people in our community that would do that, because it's hard enough being a brown or a black person or a white person. Now, put that on top of coming out of prison. That's a double bubble. Now, you're coming out of prison, you're brown, black, or white, and you got that felony. It's twice as hard. Now, add you're in recovery. You got the whole trifecta, and that makes it even harder. And people do not understand that. I go around, I tell everybody, it's good to say it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a community to uplift a broken man or woman, because we're starting all over as a child, and people need to see that. Most people, after they get clean and sober, their mental level is from the first time they got high. So you have to be easy, because we're taught in the prisons and in rehabs that there's so much help for us out there, but we're taught that. But then there's the big disconnect. Once you finish coming out the rehab, they no longer help you because they're no longer getting a check. And I say that, and I have experienced that. The same way the prison tells you, you have X, Y, and Z that you can go to, but then you get to them places and re-entry is like this big on their budget. My biggest thing is, like I'm trying to do this now, is get all these re-entry services between a couple of these nonprofits and centralize it. Let's stop making it you have to go to Conference of Churches or to get funding. Let's make it so it's in all in one spot. This is where you can go to get this money. This is where you can get to get this food. This is where you can go to. Like the Pell Grant, the Second Chance Pell Grant is offered to us out here the same way it is in prison, but nobody knows that. because nobody passes that information out. I went to school for free. It cost me the price of my books on my last semester to finish L-Tri-C. So I got an associate's degree for $300 and something. That's a blessing. And when people say I shouldn't be afforded the right to that education for free, I tell them why. And their thing is, oh, I'm paying for it. And I tell them, regardless, it's a grant. You would always pay for it. Like, I get mad when people talk about healthcare. We shouldn't be paying for it. But then I said, the emergency room's open, right? And they'd be like, yeah, so? I was like, so if you go in there with no insurance, they still have to see you. So as a taxpayer, you're still paying for it. So let's just make it accessible. It's a lot of things that aggravate me, but I can talk about now. Like, I've been a Latin King for 29 years. So I know how to manage people. But that's the good word, or motivate people. That's the good word. Where I come from, it's called manipulation. Same word. It's just one sounds positive and one is negative, but it's the same thing. So when I sat up in the prison system and I got tired of walking around the yard looking like cattle, jumping up on a pull-up bar, I was like, something gotta change. So I figured the biggest thing that gotta change was my thinking. And for me, I had to redevelop that. As a Latin King, we're taught we have a 360 in life. And it's physical, mental, and spiritual. So I had to fix my mental. My mental fixes everything else. And then go work on my spiritual. So I picked up a book. It was a blessing I picked up a book. I put down all the hood books. I stopped watching the Idiot Box, which was the TV. And I picked up a book. And it got my creativity going again. 2 months later, they offered the Second Chance Pell Grant. Our community understands failure. Anytime we're offered success, we think it's a scam and we don't sign up for stuff. So when they offered us the Second Chance Pell Grant, we have 27 state prisons. They're supposed to have 20 people per group. We only got 10 people in our group. And for them, it was a success because the graduation. But for me, it was a failure because we don't trust nobody. Because we know what failure is. We're comfortable with that. Our biggest fear is success. And that is because we don't know what success is.
And it's also not instilled. It's not taught. It's not encouraged.
Yes. We know how to fail. And COVID hit, like the recession hit. I'm sorry, our people flourished. We understand this. We give out food boxes to everybody. I was in charge of the diapers. And we know how to manage. And it hit us hard, yes. Because the price of food went up. But we know how to manage. We can look in our cabinet and in our refrigerator and we make a soup out of everything that's in there. We could have one chicken leg, one piece of jamon, one pork chop. We chop it all up and we make a soup. We just add the noodles and rice and a lot of water because water fills us up. We were taught that at an early age. Hot water is good for you. And we figured out how to succeed in failure. And like I told you earlier, I flourish in chaos. If I write everything down and try to be structured, I fail. But if I tell you how I'm feeling and push forward from there, I succeed because I understand what I got to do. And that's the main reason why I took business. I started looking at it. Okay, I know how to do inventory. I know how to control a room. I know how to give advice. I know how to take advice. As being a Latin King, I learned to be part of something instead of ahead of something. So I understand teamwork. Growing up in the neighborhoods, I understood teamwork because I was born in Spanish Harlem, but I was raised in 193rd and Crescent, St. James Park from the Bronx, BX. And I fight because that's what we were taught on the block. There was days we didn't eat, but if Fulano from the third floor cooked, everybody ate in the building, all the kids. It was always feed the kids. I learned how to sell drugs because the people in the neighborhood were like, as long as you go to school, you can come out and make some money. But if I missed school and I didn't do my homework, I wasn't allowed on the block. So something happened. Once it hit the 90s, everybody changed. Everybody went for self and forgot about community and forgot about neighborhood. We used to stand out in the blocks and help everybody's abuelitas bring the groceries up. We used to sweep up the stairs. And like, I fight all the time with a lot of the people on the street when they go around, oh, he's a crackhead, he's a dope fiend. And I sit there and I'd be like, he's paying your bills. And I tell everybody when I was out there, I said, what's the difference between that homeless guy and me? And they're like, oh, he's a bum. I'm like, I'm a bum. I just have a hustle that gets me through the day. I have goals that I instill every day that I go through. If I'm out there, like my ex-wife told me, if I'm going out there to hustle and I don't make $600 a day in profit, go get a job. It's not worth it. If you're out there to bring home $100, go get a job. It's safer. And my king name was sacrificed because I was stabbed 27 times. A year later after that, I was shot. And I earned that name, but I also despised that name because I sacrificed for all the wrong and negative things. I was part of the biggest problems in this city in the early 2000s and late 90s. And now I see my city and it hurts me the way it is because I know the damage I instilled in these neighborhoods. I still walk around these neighborhoods with my head high because I don't care. And people just find it different when they come up to me and ask me like, yo, what do you got? And I'm like, I got knowledge for you. I don't have anything else for you. I can't do that any longer. And people say, oh, people change once they have kids. Well, I had 7 of them and it didn't stop me. And our biggest excuse is, as a hustler is, oh, I'm doing this for my kids. And I tell everybody, stop lying. The kids ain't driving the cars. The kids ain't going to the clubs. The kids ain't spending none of that money. You make $1,000, you might give your BMs $100. So how is this for your kids? What are you instilling in them? What are you bringing to them? And I have a 29-year-old son. He just came out of the county jail, and it's like, I pulled him right in here to promise with me. And he's a loaded gun. But I'm showing him something different, and he's actually paying attention. Because he saw me run the streets. He saw how much of a jerk I was. And now he just looks at me and he just sits there like confused. And I was like, it's hard seeing. I said, look, we know how to struggle, so this doesn't bother me. And to be honest, right now, my biggest fear, like I told Miss Julie yesterday, is the courthouses are opening up again. And I read in the paper last week that City Council had a damn meeting about firecrackers, but not about what are they going to do when these mass evictions and mass incarceration happen again. The jail is 3/4 empty. They have over 200 to 300 active warrants right now. No one's talking about that. So it's going to affect our communities again because you're separating parents again. And this is the worst time to separate anybody. If you're a criminal, you're a criminal. But what's the use of having all these nonprofits and all these programs if we can't help? Because they're quick to say, lock up, lock up, lock up. And it don't start there. I got put into the recovery community, God bless him, by Judge Platt. Because after Montgomery County sentenced me to 15 to 40 years for 309 corridor trafficking, I had an open case out here in Lehigh County. And right before the judge passed sentence on me, he asked me if I had anything to say. And that was like at 9:15. At 12:45, he kindly told me like I need to shut up and let him talk. And he said, why did I talk for almost 3 hours? I said, because in the state guidelines, there's 3 options. Regular sentence, aggregated sentence, and rehab. You always send me aggregated. I said, you never gave me an opportunity to learn and figure out what my problem is. So he goes to me, I want you to write a victim impact statement. And I laughed. I was arrogant. I told him, yeah, no, this was 06. I told him, I don't have no victims. I have a victimless crime. And I smiled at him. He said, okay, I'm sending you to Keenan House to do TCAP after you do your 15 years. I was like, okay, that beats 5 years on top of my 15. I went back for 2 years. I fought for my appeals against Bruce Castor in Montgomery County. Went back in front of the judge. He gave me my appeals. Now, this is what I tell you, we don't know how to celebrate success. I get back to my prison, Houtzdale, a gang jail, and everyone's like, oh, you've been gone. What happened? I said, I won. They're like, how did you win? I said, I'm doing 5 to 10. They were like, but you're still in jail. I was like, but I had 15 to 40. I had 30 years on my back time. I said, I won. And everyone's like, no, you're still in jail. And I'm like, but I succeeded. And as soon as I came out of that prison, I had to go to Keenan House. And I sat there my first day and I'm watching everybody complain about they're separated from family. And I told them, well, I just finished doing 6.5 years. And I'm celebrating this because I can see people. I can wear my own clothes again. This is a blessing. What are you crying about? And in my community, that's the biggest problem in the recovery community. You want to complain that you're missing your family, but when you had the opportunity to be there, you weren't there. You're in rehab. Stop complaining. Push forward. And I sat there and I hated what Platt did to me. But after I got to see what my actions caused these people, it was like, I need the recovery community because I need to continue to see what my actions were and how I failed my community. If I stop going to meetings, I fail. Because the minute I get comfortable, I fail. Because this is all I know. I go right back to the streets. And that was in 2012. As soon as I got released from there, within 6 months, I was right back upstate. Because when I went back for the help that I needed, I wasn't a check to them.
Becomes nearly impossible.
They
You can ask everywhere, and
Yes.
there's always something that gets in the way.
So 6 months later, I was back in prison. I sat in prison for 2.5 years trying to figure things out. You know, I thank God for one of my professors, Ishmael Arcelay, that when he first saw me in class, he's like, there's something about you. And I was like, I'm just a Latino with long hair and I love to sell drugs. Because I was able to put together anything he threw up there, I could relate it to my experience in the street. He said, you have a talent, you need to work on that. And several times I wanted to leave. I didn't want to do it. I was missing the yard. I was missing hanging out with them manitos. But he always kept saying, if you want to do better, you got to do better yourself. I can't walk you down the street. You can walk yourself. I was like, okay, Ish. And I stayed there. I was offered parole May of 2019 to leave right then and there. I turned it down. I sat in prison till August 21st or 20, yeah, August 20, 2019, because I wanted to get closer to finishing my associate's degree. I came home and I met one of the craziest people ever, and that's Miss Marianelle. And she got me through LTRIC because, like I said, I didn't understand. I don't know technology. I was too far behind, but I know the work. She helped out. I had Larissa Verda. I had Yamelisa. I had Cynthia Mota. I had Miss Julie. I had Dr. Batts. I had everybody here that I walked in to Promise my first day with Ish. And I looked at everybody like, okay, I know nonprofits as being white people trying to feel good about what they do for us. This was the first time I walked into a place and it was my people in charge of it. And they were actually talking about stuff I understood. And it wasn't, this is what you people need. No, we go and ask the community, what do you want? And I met some cool people. And I've been here every day since. When I started my last semester at LTRIC, I was scared because I was still lost. I met JB Riley, I met Charlie, I met a whole bunch of people that said, you got this. And like, I like having cheerleaders, but I also had to learn that I have to be my own biggest cheerleader because when they fall to the side, I could be the only one that can push myself. And I love it because there's times I walk in, like my biggest fear, those who know me, was environmental science. I thought I got a D on my first exam out of 5, and I was like, oh, this is over. I never saw what a D looks like. And I ended up passing that class with an A. And the professor said, you put in all the work, you started at a D, but you did it, you know? And I had help, Miss Julie. I forgot her name, Miss Julie.
Rachel Zane. Rachel Zane.
Rachel Zane helped me out with my paper.
She's a teacher at William Allen in environmental science.
So, and my subject was when bees die, we die, because I realize it's the small things in life that people don't look at. And if you look at this magnificent bee, without it, we die. And people do not see that. They pollinate everything, almost everything we eat. And we go around as kids putting them in jars and shaking the jars up and stepping on them. And it's like, yes, you could be allergic, but we have to understand we moved into their environment. They're not in our environment. And without them, we die. Because everything dies below us, everything up top. We are an apex predator. If all the prey and all the vegetation dies, we die. Simple as that. And it's like life. You gotta have wrong things to know what right is. But in our community, all we know is wrong and wrong. And like, I think it was Beanie that said it. We know the difference between doing wrong and being wrong. And we're not wrong people. We gotta eat. We gotta survive. And if you don't understand that, you don't know my fight, my struggle. And I fight every day. I have a spinal injury when I was stabbed in the spinal cord. I have options, but I won't take them. I'm not gonna keep taking pills. I take pills now because I'm a diabetic, and I hate taking them. But I've understood life-sustaining meds and the process of getting high. I just had a hernia surgery. They gave me Percocets, and I argued with everybody. And they were like, pain management. And I was like, how about I just try to deal with it? I'm sorry. 2 days later, I couldn't no more. I had to take one. I had to talk to everybody in the recovery house. I was like, look, I'm taking one. And they were like, no, you need to take one. They gave me 20 of them. I think I took 3. And I went to ibuprofen then. Because my well-being is the most important thing to me right now. I can't afford to slide backwards, even though I have a bunch of lifeguards around me that will pull me up. But somewhere down in life, I got to learn to pull myself up. And there's a lot of things I don't know. And I've learned to ask questions, because the problem with our community, if we don't know, we just keep it pushing. And I've learned to open up my mouth. And if I don't know something, I don't know. Before, I was quick to, I knew everything. And now I realize that I don't know anything. But I learned to survive because the people around me. I walk in through the doors here and I get a good morning every morning. I didn't get that at home. I used to walk in my house and it was like, get out my face, what are you doing here? Now it's good morning, how you doing? How was your day?
You feel welcome.
Yes, I feel appreciated. Even if I don't do nothing, it's appreciation that we need to understand.
So it's easy to minimize your impact. It's
Yes.
easy to say, you know, because I do nothing. The reality is that the reason why you're welcome and appreciated is because you are. It's because you're being yourself. You're being genuine. And people appreciate that. They appreciate you. They appreciate your humor. Having you around is a riot.
Yeah.
For those that don't, for those that haven't been around Jose yet, you need to come around. And you know, as you were talking, like, you brought up so many key points. Not just with, you know, treatment and recovery, but the labels of criminality and how people have the fear, you know, so many people fear the unknown and fear success, because to us it is unknown, because it's not ingrained as an option. It's not given to us as an option. But the other thing that you touched on was how you were able to apply your natural strengths into the streets, and that's how you flourished, or so it felt, that it was, you know, this big success that you achieved. But what it sounds like to me is that it was because the Kings made an investment in you,
Mm-hmm.
and they helped you find your strengths and develop your strengths. So what would that be if our community would take a second to actually meet our children and identify a strength and help them develop that? Where could they go? How far could they reach?
There is no limit, because when I sat in front of city council, I asked the question of how do we kill the gangs, and I didn't identify myself. And they gave me a 20-minute speech about ideas they had. So I raised my hand again, and I told them, I don't know if you were there or not, but I told them I said, okay, let me identify myself. My name's Jose Rivera. I am a member of the Almighty Latin King and Queen Nation, and their faces all changed. And I told them, how do you kill the gangs? Is you take away our bloodline. Our bloodline is the children. We age out, but every child that we get adds another 20 years to the increase of us.
Of longevity to the gang. Yep.
And as a Latin King, we don't promote. The city promotes us. Because when you arrest somebody, just arrest them. Don't say he's a member of the Latin Kings. You're promoting it. The minute you promote the gangs get more recognition. That bad publicity is good publicity for us. But like I told them, Yamelisa, you hear gangs, and gangs is a bad word in the community. But in our community, it's a good thing. But everyone else needs to realize, when you hear gangs are in one community, stop closing everything down. Stop closing the rec centers. Stop closing the after-school programs, because you're giving these kids no options but to come to us. You gave them that option. I told city council that we didn't. You gave us your kids. We didn't ask for them. You weren't there. Does it really bother you to have 2 or 3 kids inside the house playing video games and running around the house? It gets a little dirty. Deal with it. Because where would you rather have your little 12, 13, and 14-year-old outside in the street playing around and learning what we're doing out there? You gave us the kids. Don't cry about it now.
So the part, yes, and absolutely. So when you were talking about growing up in the Bronx, and how, yes, it takes a village to raise a child, absolutely. And then you were sharing growing up, 70s, early 80s, it was seeing how when you were doing wrong, it didn't matter whether it was your aunt, your uncle, or your neighbor. Somebody was going to call you out on it.
Yeah.
How do you feel that?
You understand that, Yamelisa? We used to go out, and if I said something to my neighbor's mom beat me up, then took me home, and then I got beat up again. Now it's, oh, you can't touch my child. I'm like, no, beat him up. If he did something wrong, beat him up, bring him to me, I'll beat him up too. But everyone is so, let's pamper these kids. Like, I'm sorry, I don't like the participation trophy. If you didn't earn it, you didn't earn it. We need to stop. I believe in giving to the community, but don't give if it's not earned. But my biggest thing is opportunities. Give those as much as you can. And don't give me a job, show me how to do the job. Because like I told JB, yes, you're building these magnificent buildings, but my people can cook the food for you. We can secure the buildings for you. We can clean the rooms. But I don't see none of my people walking around in suits in there.
Right.
Like, you have a community college right in front of your headquarters. Use some of those kids. Give them the internships. Stop looking outside our community, because you're bringing all these people from outside our community into our community. And the community's biggest fear is we're getting pushed out. And yeah, we're getting pushed out. And when push comes to shove, our people are going to stand up, and we're going to destroy everything in the way, because we flourish in that. But if you don't show them, I have 50 jobs. I'm going to give 25 to the community, 25 to outsiders. I have no problem with that. But when you have 50 jobs and 45 go to the outside and 5 go to the people of the community, what are you showing my community? He put me in the real estate lab, and the biggest question I asked him was, I said, JB, I know you, and how do we instill the confidence of our community that we're just not going in there and buying these buildings, fixing them up, and running them to the outsiders? How do we instill the confidence that this is going to be low-income housing, and we're going to keep it affordable? because we're going to plaster up all these signs, the lab, all these buildings. We're going to go in there on Tuesday and fix the drywall. And Wednesday morning, we're going to come fix the drywall again because they're going to tear it up because they don't trust us. They don't know that. He's like, it's building a brand. I'm like, what brand? They don't trust us. You're not putting people from the community doing these buildings. And he looked at me.
Let's be honest too. The only reason why we need to keep hearing, or while we continue to hear this whole, it has to be low income housing and it has to be accessible to the people in the community and it has to be that, is because they have kept us broke.
Yes.
The only reason why we can't afford $1,200 for a 1-bedroom is because we're making $7 an hour.
Yes.
If we were making, I mean, they're talking about how the city of Allentown is 2/3, 2/3 people of color, and 1/4 of the entire population lives in poverty.
Yes.
That means that there's a good section that does not.
Yes.
Our city is not broke. Allentown is rich.
Our city is broken.
Exactly. So it's not about being broke and there not being enough money and how we need low income housing. Is that if you invest and grow, and like you were talking about, it's not only pushing trades and telling people that they're limited as far as how far they can go in their careers. It's understanding that we have the ability to go as far as anyone else in the world. Like, we're just not forfeited the opportunity. We're actually the opportunities get taken away. So it's knowing that, very few of the people in politics identify as people of color. Mm-hmm. Very few are there and we can actually relate with. So I think it's just so beautiful, what you're saying, how it's important to invest into the growth of the community, into the development of the community. And this conversation about low income housing wouldn't be a thing if this city truly flourished the way that it could, because then there would be no low income. It would be the middle class again, which truly just barely exists in this area. So we're going to start looking at some of the questions that have been asked so we can start answering those questions. Did you have something else to add before we do that? Because you're like, tell us.
No, I'm good. It's just, I'm ready.
All right, let me see where.
So Yamelisa, sorry, I'm just muting everybody in my background. So, like, you guys be quiet. So I just wanted to acknowledge, if you all are transitioning now to question and answer, there are a couple questions that have come in the chat, but there's also Justin, who's had his hand raised for a very long time. I think he definitely has something that he wanted to ask or say to the two of you. So I can ask him to unmute, like I can do that control for you. Okay.
Hey everyone, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thanks for having me on. It was a virtual hand raise, so that's a good thing, I guess, right? I just wanted to say I was super proud of Yamelisa, and I also wanted to say I have a comment and a question. So really, my comment was for Jose. Your story is really inspirational, and I really wanted to tell you that your community and your city failed you. You didn't fail yourself. So I just wanted to relay that to you. With not having met you before and listening to your story, it's not only on you. With regards to that, you were let down by your city. I do have a question though, just because you guys are discussing like social agencies and mental health awareness and those resources that are out there. So the president of City Council in Allentown did mention that due to COVID-19 and the shutdown, like the recent pandemic issue, many social service agencies were shut down, and it makes it seem that there's no resources out there for people that would need or benefit from these social services and whatnot. And this was in his argument, with regards to moving funds away from the police and actually into social service agencies and local social workers and groups like that. How do you guys like fix the misinformation that's out there to advise that there are resources for people who have substance abuse issues or mental health issues, when city officials are saying, hey, these places are closed due to coronavirus and COVID-19, and that's why we need the police out there instead of them.
And I can share. The reality is that many people can say that, and it's a shame that before speaking from a position of power where people are going to listen to you, you don't educate yourself and understand the fact that every substance use disorder facility that provides treatment and education is open and has been open through this entire time. They are all considered essential businesses. They did have to transition, and most did. Actually, they didn't have to. They were able to stay open physically, but most transitioned to online just to make it more accessible and to maintain the clients and the community safe. So Zoom meetings have been available, not only community meetings as far as NA and AA, but also intensive outpatient, and all of the different levels, individual counseling, family therapy, and they have continued to be available.
Like us through Promise, we've had Paula Gonzalez on standby if anyone had any problems. We had Yamelisa on standby. We've had people, and it's just when they read one thing in the paper, this is what they believe. Like they tell you, don't believe everything on the internet, don't believe everything in the paper. Do your research, come out here and find. Like we were technically closed to the public, but if you would have came knocking on this door, we would have told you have your mask and come in. And what's the problem? We were here and I wasn't supposed to be here. I got yelled at every day because I'm a diabetic to stay away. But what did you want me to do? Stay at home? My people needed me. Like, I'm an old head, and my favorite song of all times is Dilated Peoples. When worst come to worst, my peoples come first. And I take that very seriously because I'm going to always do bad, but sometimes my bad is for the good of my people. And that's the only way I understand life. And we were here. We've been feeding the community, putting diapers out, helping people fill out the applications for the rent. So
Renters assistance.
Yes, our services have been here and we've helped a lot of people. Then through you, through Ortiz ARC, we've been here. But it's a shame because our name ain't Red Cross and United Way that we don't get the credit that we should. But it is what it is.
And that's the reality. A lot of the resources of larger corporations became limited because they do a lot of in-office work, and because they're so large, they weren't able to have all of their employees present. But when you talk about like Jose,
but I give them credit. They came through us and helped us when we needed them. So
yes, once the request was put in, they have been helpful, and they need to receive credit where credit is due. However, when you talk to the smaller organizations, that is only a handful of us providing services to the community. As the Unidos Foundation stepped up and provided over 250 families with laptops and access to internet. We didn't have to ask questions. We didn't have to go to 15 people on a board and find out who was going to approve and where the money was going to come from. We just said, we're getting computers for the kids. Who wants to help? And it poured in, and it all came from the community itself. And we were hand delivering the computers. We would package them up, disinfect them, get them ready, place them on the porch. Hey, your computer's out front, come grab it. And it was done. It was, so it hasn't stopped. And thank you for asking that, Justin, because it's important, to understand that even though, you may hear it on the news, you may see it in the newspaper, you may hear it from what you believe is a reputable source telling you, it's a lot of relapses are happening because treatment's not available. No, a lot of relapses are happening because we're in a pandemic and people are stuck at home and you're telling them they can't do anything. And like Jose said, being alone, like being stagnant is not
for drugs,
safe.
regardless.
It's not safe for someone in recovery. Being alone, it's not a good option because who's your company? Your best friend, the best friend that has been there all along, that helps you feel warm and cozy inside. And when you can't have a person next to you, the drugs will always be there. You will find a way.
The drug dealers didn't take time out because of COVID. They flourished.
Correct. And then the other part too that you touched, Jose, is the fact that the shutdown helped a lot of people of color to flourish in many different ways because it slowed down everything else. But the reality is because of that. It's because we're survivors. It's because we have always lived in a pandemic. We have always lived in chaos, and not by choice. You know what I mean? It's not a choice. You know, the segregation that has occurred forever in the history of this country hasn't changed. You know, slavery hasn't stopped. It's just, you know, if those of you that hopefully you watched the 13th, the reality is it has just changed form. It's just called something different. It's just labeled differently.
It's called prison.
Exactly. You know, now, and that's why the importance of understanding that 13th Amendment is that freedom is for everyone, but not for people that break the law. And then it's easy to just take anyone that has done, you know, a minor crime, label them criminal, and then that record stays with them forever.
Yeah, it's easy to put us in prison and make us work for 19 cents an hour, while the state got a contract paying us at $12 to $15 an hour, but we get 19 cents an hour. It's easy for us to go clean the highways, chop the trees for the forestry programs in the parks of the state of Pennsylvania. It's easier for the prisons to send us to clean out their state parks and pay us pennies. And then as inmates, we get no credit for that. No one knows who's cleaning up the parks, but it gets done. And everyone says, oh, you need to be in prison. You don't need a TV. You don't need books. You don't need education. You don't need to work out. You don't need to do anything but just sit in there. So my thing is to everyone, what's going to happen when they come home? Are you ready to deal with that? Madness is madness. And when someone sits behind jails for years at a time, we're talking penitentiaries, not counties, and all they do is sit back and think about how they feel that everyone did them wrong. Yes, we were wrong for going to jail. Yes, we committed a crime. Because I don't say I caught a charge, because they're not just flying around out there and I'm chasing them. I committed a crime. And those up there understand they committed crimes. But what happens with all that anger pent up for years and they come home? You got a bigger, stronger criminal. You didn't teach him nothing. He didn't learn nothing. But everyone wants to say, lock him up, lock him up, lock him up. Sometimes this lockup ain't the solution. You're locking up somebody for 2 bags of dope and you're giving them 2 to 5 years because it's the 3rd time they got caught with it. 2 to 5 years. But you never gave this guy no type of recovery skills, no type of reentry skills. When they took away our trades up in the state prison, that was the worst thing they did. When they took away the Pell Grants, when Governor Corbett did it in 2009, the first time I got involved in it, that was the worst thing they could have done. If we're not learning, we're doing wrong. And you lock us up in prisons, all we do is find more connects to help us sell drugs, more ways to commit crimes, because now we're learning off it. We educate each other in the negative ways. And we also find more clientele. So society has this choice: have us learn right or continue for us to do wrong. And it's taken all these years for society to come start to realize we need to teach them right. And the prisons were slick when they went from penitentiaries to institutions. They grabbed that name to get more funding as a place of learning. But you're not teaching us anything. Because if I go in on a 15 to 30 years, I can't do no programs till I'm 13 years in. So for 13 years, I sat up there and now I got to do a program before I go home. But these same programs are offered to us out here, but no one talks about them. And that's the biggest disconnect in society right now. A lot of these organizations have the knowledge, but don't pass it on, and they don't share it with other ones. Yamelisa knows over here at Promise, and through her, we share everything. You need something, come and get it. Because we're supposed to be for community. And if Yamelisa's organization needs something, that's part of our community. It's not a competing force. It's part of our community. She's doing something that we can't do. And let her do it.
Absolutely. It's so important.
Yamelisa could call me right now that she needs help, and what do you need? I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love it. Because anyone calls and I can do it, I'm there. Because I like to be in the background. Like when I first came home, everything I did was in the background. I hid from everybody. I did all my work in blackout because that's where I was comfortable at. I can I can lead from behind. How I put it? I can lead from behind, but I can't succeed from back there. So it took me 9 months to come out to the forefront. And I'm here, and there's times I don't like it. I want to hide because that's where I'm comfortable at. But Doc told me where you're uncomfortable at is where you're going to succeed at. Because if you're comfortable, you're just sitting back.
It's important.
Any more questions?
It's important for that. So we have a question here from Chelsea. Do you think that a language barrier is a big issue in Allentown that may prevent individuals from climbing the job ladder, or they feel uncomfortable to put themselves out there in higher jobs? For me, and that has been part of my discussion since forever, since I became a professional. The reality is that in our community, those that are Spanish-speaking professionals get placed in a position where basically you are just not good enough, regardless of your experience, regardless of the degrees that you have. I mean, I've met so many individuals, especially with everything that had been going on in Puerto Rico, from the natural disasters to just everything in general. So a lot of influx of residents came to the Allentown area with diplomas, with degrees, with experience. And because they didn't master the English language, they couldn't be hired. We are a city that has nearly 80% minority, and a huge percentage of that is Spanish-speaking populations. Why can't you provide your services in Spanish?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need to already come in mastering the English language when we live in a country that does not have a language? You are not forced to learn English. You're just expected to, because that's what we're taught. But the reality is the service should be available and provided in the language and the culture of the individuals that you're serving. I don't need to speak English to provide group for my Spanish-speaking clients. I need to speak Spanish. I need to understand the culture. I need to be able to identify and address their needs in a way that they are comfortable. So it's not discomfort, it's limitation placed by others. And Chelsea, I thank you for that question, because that's how many people see it. It's like, oh, they're afraid, they're afraid to apply for these jobs and all these things. The reality is, no, they have these little clause and all of them, discrimination, regardless of, language and race and blah, 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 the EOs. Who's getting hired if they don't speak English? And what job are they going to get? And then somehow, right, those Spanish-speaking professionals that have decades of experience running companies and having businesses and providing professional services, they're able to get hired at Amazon and Walmart and all these factories. So you can do that job, but you can't do the job that you've done for the last 20 years. How does that make sense?
Yeah, Yamelisa, with me, it's more like some of our people that do succeed, they forgot where they came from, and they don't give that helping hand to the next person. I am very local and centralized. Like, my life right now consists of a 4-block radius. But if I have to spend money at a bodega, I go to 5th and Washington, because that's Louis' store. That's someone I grew up with. He knows my whole family. I know that money is going to stay here in my community. I don't go to a store where they tell me the owner's in New York. No, because that money's going outside my community, whatever they make. They are not providing the services that I need. So I'm very picky about where I spend my money, because I want to spend my money on the stores that are helping me. Like, if I know if we need something over here at Promise, I can go to Louis, like, look, can you provide us with lunch? And he'll do it.
And it's not that it's picky, it's intentional and it's purposeful. And people fail to see that when we invest in ourselves, and that's the slogan for my nonprofit, live here, invest here. This is where we need to invest our money. You have all these big nonprofits, as you mentioned earlier, that give out gift cards. We are giving gift cards for people to get money and go to restaurants and do this and do that, but they'll buy it to Outback and to Giant and to whatever. Buy it to the mom and pop shop that's down the street.
Yeah.
Give them a gift card for $50 to the bodega down the street. Give them a $50 gift card to the restaurant.
We spend our money at the bodegas. We don't go out there. We spend our money at the bodegas. This is what we know. If we need something, it's like, okay, Supremo's 2 blocks away, or I could just walk to the corner. Yes, I'm going to pay 10, 20 cents more, but you know what? If I need credit, Supremo's not going to give me the credit.
Right.
If I need food to cook for today, I can go to my corner bodega. He's going to be like, okay, take what you need and just pay me when you can. You can't walk into Supremos or IGA and tell them, oh, I need credit because my family don't have food.
That's right.
If you support that local bodega and they see you every day, give you the credit. People want to run away from the community. Everything I do is, even when I was doing wrong, when Carlos had the store on 7th and Chu and the Peruvian had it on 7th, no, the Peruvian had it on 7th and Chu and Carlos had it on 7th and Turner. And Carmen had it on 6th and Turner, Happy Dairy. That's what I spent my money on. And
I grew up a block away from
on 4th
there.
and Turner. So that's where I spent my money, because these are the people, when I didn't have it, I could go in there and Sue would be like, you hungry? I make you sandwich. And she was a little Asian woman. And like we walked in and everyone was her babies. You hungry? You need something to eat? Grab it, pay me later. And I love that. But now people look at the corner book like, oh, I'm not going to pay that extra 20 cents. That extra 20 cents, you're paying for something later on down the line. You develop those relationships with your bodegas and they will always bless you.
And when you create that sense of ownership and belonging with these small businesses, not only do you benefit as a customer, but the bodega itself benefits as well, because the community will protect it. And that's something else that, we need to go back to, is that family, that belonging, that sense of part of the community. You know their names because you were in there often and they welcomed you. They would ask you, are you okay? Are you hungry? They will see you staring at the ice cream freezer, knowing you couldn't afford that 25-cent banjo when you were little.
Yeah.
That you were sent in there to buy $1 loaf of bread.
Yep.
And you could only buy the loaf of bread. But you went to, like you said, Carmen or any of them will go and do what you were told to do. You bring your dollar, you pick up your loaf of bread, and you get home.
Yep.
So you put it on the counter, you pay for that. She's watching you stare
Yep.
at that freezer. Guess what she would do? Go ahead and grab it.
Yep.
And gift it to you because
Yep.
you were one of her babies.
Yep.
So one of the questions that came through from Natalie, can you share some resources or a hotline in Lehigh Valley or for substance use? Also, whether these resources are provided in other languages. So the phone number for the Lehigh County Single County Authority, and they are basically the Drug and Alcohol Department of the county. That phone number is 484-362-0000. They have an entire list for all of the services available that Lehigh County contracts with. That does not mean those are all the services.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just the services that Lehigh County contracts with, that they receive funds federally as well as from the state to be able to help individuals that are uninsured and underinsured. They will have information about prevention, treatment, higher levels of care, assessment, all of it. So if you call that number, they'll be able to, and you can actually go online to the Lehigh County website and find the information about drug and alcohol treatment. But again, those are just the agencies that contract with the county. And some are available in Spanish. Most are not. Other languages, probably none, to be honest with you. Very, very, very few agencies in our area recognize that we have a very, very large population of Arabic speaking individuals, and the services in their language is still not available. So that's something else that adds to that stigma. As minorities, substance use and mental health is a huge stigma, carries a huge stigma, and is very difficult for a person to ask for help. And then once they do, they don't find it. It's not available. So it just makes it even harder to get better, to get healthy, to work towards growth. And we need to recognize that. We have a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood of individuals of Syrian descent, and who's servicing them. You know, they're a very close-knit community, and we, you know, we see them, we are neighbors, and it's beautiful. However, when it comes to professional assistance for them and services, it's just not available. And then even for us, like I was speaking of, Spanish-speaking communities, you would think by now the city and the county would have figured out the importance of providing services in Spanish for all levels of services that are available. And yet somehow we're an inconvenience. You walk in and they ask you, or even before they see your name and they ask you, do you speak English? Listen, I don't need to. The reality is what you need to do is bring me that interpreter line and put it on.
Yep.
My job is not to bring you comfort. Your job is to service me as a patient and as a client.
Yep.
So all those parts need to continue to be brought forth, and for individuals to know that I should be able to walk into any hospital, any agency. If you're receiving state and federal funds, you better find a way to address your community and
Didn't we say hot in here?
So it's important. It's important for all of us to continue to speak up about, you know, the inequity that still exists and how that needs to shift to address and service the community as it is today and as it continues to develop into, because we're only growing from here. We're not going back to whatever comfortable was for those in power. We're not going back to that. That's not the reality. That may have been your reality 30 years ago. However, today Allentown is a very different city than it has ever been. And until, you know, we start to see some of those changes, we're going to continue to fight for them, because we are community members. We have a voice and we have a vote, and we are going to use it. Historically, we may not have been. However, you'll see the shift, and everyone will see the shift. So I'm excited for that. Let me see. Are there any other questions? Did any come in privately, or did we miss any in the chat? Do you see any? No.
I don't see any. If you guys would like, I can put up the discussion
Don't
slide
ask
for
me.
you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be important to see some of the questions that you came up with, and that we can kind of allow the participants to ask. Let's see. Did you want to read them?
Sure. So the first question is, what connections can you make between addiction, recovery, and substance use, the social determinants of health, in the movie 13th? This is the first one. The second one is, what questions do you have for Jose about prison reform, reentry, and police reform? The third one is, what questions do you have for Yamelisa about how practitioners and community members can support recovery and healthy life outcomes for vulnerable members and those in contact with the prison system?
Perfect. So, I mean, as you know, as individuals hopefully start submitting their questions, I think it's important to really take a look at just all of it. You know, watching the movie 13th, as we mentioned earlier, is understanding that shift that has occurred. You know, the continuum of power has not shifted as far as it could have. There may be some parts that, you know, now individuals of color have some power, but the reality is that it's still basically the power that we're allowed to have, just a little bit that we are granted. And the reality is that shouldn't continue to have to be a discussion. No one needs to grant us power. The power is ours. You know what I mean? The equity, you know, as it gets addressed, it's something that needs to be across the board. and then allow us to make the decision whether we would be interested in going into a trade, whether we would be interested in going into, you know, any type of professional service or to be an entrepreneur. You know, allow us to make the decision. Jose, were you gonna say something?
It's like how you were saying that we have the power of vote, but the problem is our people don't use it.
Haven't historically.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because we have the power to change Allentown. Like everyone's biggest complaint is we haven't had a minority mayor in this city. We've had all these beautiful city council people, but no one has stepped up to that mayor's plate yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been a white male. And I like Ray. Ray understands some of us because he grew up teaching us, but that's his only experience of us. There has not been no one from our neighborhoods to step up to that plate. Someone who I can say like, oh yeah, I know him from 2nd Street. I know him from 7th Street. Oh yeah, he grew up in Cumberland Gardens. That would be the biggest jump for me, to see someone from my community step up to the plate. And I'm sorry, you know, I favor Cynthia, so I hope one day she just decides to step up because she got it. She got it. And I keep telling her, what are you scared of? You have the people. Everywhere we go, you know somebody, and you know a lot of successful people,
Right.
but you also know the people at the bottom. She has not disconnected from that, from her growing up here. And I always tell her, like, what are you waiting for? You have it. And this is the time now. Because I hate when people say they don't want to see a female in power, but my mom had all the power in my house.
Mm-hmm.
And as a guy, your wife has all the power in the household. You may pay the bills, but she knows what needs to get paid, how it gets paid, and when it gets paid. We just pick things up to put them down, like the commercial. We know how to work for the money, but we don't know where to put it at. And I think that is the most beautiful thing, a woman in power who knows how to keep control, not as a woman, but as a person. And our people need to start stepping up. And don't get comfortable with like, oh, he's going to win, I don't want to go vote. No, go vote. I worked the polls this year and I was a little upset where they put me at because I wanted to go to Central, and then they told me Central was full, and they sent me to the ASD building. And then we got a call an hour later that Central was empty. They only had one person. And there was mass confusion this year.
Mm-hmm.
But our people got to stop complaining about what needs to get done if they don't vote. I'm sorry. You need to go vote. You need to go push for what you want. You can't say it's never going to change. It's never going to change if you don't show up.
Right.
We have the power in this city. But again, we're so used to failing that that's what we're comfortable at.
Yeah, I mean, we had a Latina candidate step up this past election in the primaries that just happened. We just had an election on June 2nd, and still, I believe we're still awaiting on the certification of the election because there's an ongoing investigation. And the difference between her and the incumbent is 57 votes, 57 individual votes from an incumbent that has been
57.
You were, but it's that, it's
Mm-hmm.
just knowing that, you know, when we do step up and have the courage to do it, so many things are against us, but we need to stop being afraid, you know. And you mentioned fear in the
But
past.
I also don't say just don't vote for your person. Just because they're Latino,
educate
sometimes
yourself.
they're wrong.
Absolutely.
And that's
Educate
why I couldn't go for her, because
Mhm.
I didn't like some of the stuff she was saying.
Right. And that's the thing, we all have, you know, the right to educate ourselves on the candidate, and you should vote for the person that really pushes forth what's going to benefit you and your community, how you're going to grow, you know, a person that fights for justice and equity. And it doesn't have to look like the candidate that I may go for. That's the reality. You know, that's why the information about candidates is made public. That's why the commercials are made and the debates are done, so that people educate themselves. You know, we have a presidential election coming up, and many will like one and many will like the other. And you have every right every right. Your vote is yours, and you use that as you may, because that's it. That's the only way to express your voice. So it is important to educate ourselves. It is important for us to know who is running and whether that person, you know, really is the best fit for that position. And if you agree they are, you vote for them. If you agree they are not, you find the candidate that best fits, you know, what you feel is the need of your community. So yeah, absolutely. I do see one question that came in, or one statement. I'm not sure it's just a statement. It says ALEC and the interests of their members. So is that just stating from the first question? What connections do you see between, you know, addiction, recovery, substance use, and the movie 13th? And if so, for those of you that saw the movie, the reality is that ALEC is this huge, you know, collection of corporations that have a say in legislation, which, by the way, should be illegal. No one's money should be the one making the decisions or pushing legislators to decide for the greater good. The decisions should be made on the actual greater good. So for the individuals to have a say as to how the prison, you know, continues to run, as to how you know, legislation is passed, how, you know, whether those that are currently in power should be kept in power, etc. Those are some of the things that need to be worked towards to dismantling, to defunding. And when we use those words, that does not mean you know, in every sense of the word, breaking down to nothing. What it means is rebuilding from a foundation of what the community looks like, of justice, you know. So when you rebuilt whatever systems are working towards being broken down or being defunded, that is to address the actual need of that community. That is to address the demographic of the city, of the county, of the country, and going from there, growing from there. It's not staying stuck that, well, this is how it's always been done. Well, yeah, except that the way that it's always been done has not benefited all members or most members. It usually only benefits a very small percentage of the people in those cities or in those states or in the country as a whole. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for that. And so yeah, so you were going for kind of like that correlation between what we saw in 13th and how that affects the way that, you know, that health is addressed, the way that treatment is addressed, the way that we service and make things available for communities of color. Jose, did you have any other comments? Awesome. All right, so let me see. So we were able to see, and I mean, I think the reality is that it was just so important to understand how things have shifted from one end where, you know, where this country was built upon, and how many of those things have continued to carry on. It may be in new forms. And then others have been added on to maintain control of individuals of color. And now is really just making that shift from, you know, abusing power and shifting from slavery to prison labor and making it sound as if is this noble thing of, oh, but we allow them to work. We allow them to make money. We allow them to speak to their families.
No,
Those are basic rights.
And then they take 20% off the 19 cents that you're making to tell you, oh, you got to start paying your court costs and fines. So it's like you're taking 20% off on 19 cents for what? So, like, equal pay for equal work. I understand we're not going to make $10 in prison. I said, but I do believe if you're going to charge me $1 for a soup, and I got to work 4 hours to pay for that soup. How fair is that? You're charging me $1 for a soup that I can get a ramen noodle anywhere between 12 and 18 cents at any corner store, but you're going to charge me $1 for it. The problem with the prison system is it's been privatized, and they can do whatever they want because, like they said, there's laws in place that they can't make $1 off of us, but that does not stop them from getting a kickback from the company. And that's their biggest thing, the kickback. It's a shame that before we were paying $5 for a phone call to call right across the street from the prison. And for me, I was all the way in Frackville. I was paying $6.63 to call Lehigh County, but my cousin was locked up in Michigan and he was paying $1.36. Same company, GTL. But go figure.
Yeah. All right, so we have one last question before we wrap up, and this is for Jose. This question comes from Natalie. So, do you believe the prison system and or recovery system has changed for the better in any way over the years?
No, firm no. Because as long as they look at it as a business, it's going to be a failure because they all work on treatment and not prevention. How do we prevent these people from using drugs? How do we prevent these people from going to jail? And how do you prevent them is give them better jobs. Give them their value, what they're worth. Show us what we're worth. But if you continue to lock me up and tell me my labor is only worth 19 cents, and because I can go to jail and you can take care of me medically all day, but it's a shame I have to go to jail to get a tooth pulled. I have to go to jail to get a surgery, but I come home and I can't get that same system outside in the free society, and it's not right because like it's equality for all. And recovery and rehabilitation is the same thing. It's all about putting everybody in one re-entry. But everyone's too quick. You go to a rehab and they want you out of there in 30 days. And my understanding, it takes 90 days for your true self to clean a clearer picture. 30 days, you're still fuzzy. In 60 days, you're getting a better understanding. But in 90 days, you are yourself. And people complain it costs too much. That's because it's a business. It's not about helping you any longer. It's about what I can get for me at this end. And it shouldn't be that. And the prison shouldn't be privatized. Yes, it's a burden on the county, but if you put that burden on the county, they'll stop locking up people for 2 bags of weed. When it no longer becomes a burden, it's privatized, where now they charge you, what's that, a one-time fee of $60, a processing fee? Before it was $10 to $15 a day they charged you for being there, which they weren't getting. So now their slick thing is, you owe us $60 for going to jail, and we're going to take that the first money you get that gets sent to you, or the first money you are owed. And it might have the county name. It might say Lehigh County. It might say state. It might say Frackville State Institution. But a lot of these jails are privatized, and it's a shame because now they're not being used what they were for. And education is the best thing. And if it wasn't for education, I would have never been and came to where I'm at right now. I would have came home in August, and right now I might have been living better because I would have had all the money that I needed. But how long does money last when I'm sitting in jail? Like a good lesson was taught to me is like, I was out for 6 months. I made closer to 75 grand in 6 months. But now if I would have been to Working Square and worked for them 13 years I was in jail, I would have made way more than that. Because you know the movie The Bronx Tale, and Sonny said the working man's a sucker. I was a firm believer in that. But now, after I did the numbers, it's like, no, the working man was right, because I hustled hard, but then once I go to jail, that income stops coming in. That working man passed me and oversaw me because I don't have nothing to show for it because they took everything from me. But that working man has his house. Like, it's not that our community is lazy, far from it. Our community will break their backs for you. We're not given the right opportunities to do that. And then they fail us by telling us you have a chance to grow in this company. And then, like you said, the language, the education. If you go in as maintenance, you're going to stay as maintenance because you have no further education. You don't
One of
want
the
to learn.
saddest things to see is that when and you know, a company posts a job for a management position, and this new manager comes in, you know, fresh out of college, has all the degrees and the drive to learn. The ones training this person are those that are going to be working below them.
Yeah.
And it's baffling that, you know, you have someone that has the experience, has the ability, has the knowledge to do the job, and because the letters after their name do not reflect what you believe should be put in there, you have them train the new person coming in. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So, you know, so many things need to change. So many things need to shift from where they are now. And you know, as we get together and unite as a community, we're going to continue to push for those things. So,
But,
you know,
thank you for that question.
Yes, thank you, definitely. So as we, you know, wrap up, one of the things that I want to share, and
there's
go
one
ahead,
more
Jose.
question.
Did something come in privately to you?
No, it's it.
There's a question from
there we go.
Abigail.
Yeah.
I see it. Okay. For either of you, do you have suggestions for tangible steps that we can take to improve any of the things that you've talked about today? So when you say we can change, do you mean as a community? Do you mean as agencies? Because all in all, I mean, one thing that is, you know, and we mentioned it throughout the presentation, it's investing in the community, educating our community, and providing actual opportunities that need to be made available. Abigail, okay, she said as individuals. For us as individuals is to be able, and Jose said it best, is, you know, when you receive knowledge, when you receive information, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your neighbor, share it with the people around you, allow them to access the same opportunities and the same information that you've received. Because as we grow and we go through this entire process of, you know, fight for justice and equity, many of our friends that are now allies receive information that they don't share with many of us.
Yep.
You know, you may have companies and agencies that are pursuing you because, again, the letters after your name fit the bill. But I don't receive that email, or Jose doesn't receive that email, and most of our community doesn't receive that information. And it's very specific. It goes to very targeted individuals, just because those in power want to continue to have individuals that look like them, you know, succeed first above all else. And when you know, and Jose mentioned that as individuals, and he mentioned it, you know, in the reality of gangs, but that's all across any agency. You come into something and you live through it and you work through it, you're going to age out. That's any company, any job, any hospital, any agency, any everything. You may start, but that's what retirement is. So as people retire, those that they're training to come into these positions should reflect the demographic of the community that they will be serving, not just themselves and how things were 40 years prior, 30 years prior. So it needs to start shifting to reflect the communities and the people that get served through that agency and through those companies. I was, you know, through the marches that have been happening and being involved in many of the, you know, push for social justice reform. I heard one of the speakers and good friend of mine, Darian Colbert, share that when he provides education to students in the Allentown School District, he went into a third, and I believe he said third grade, and don't quote me because this is his story, not mine, but I'll share. He went in to provide information to third graders in inner city. And as he's speaking, he was like, yes, because, you know, you guys are all worthy of growing up and being successful and having all these opportunities. And he's looking around and all the children are looking at him baffled, like, what are you talking about? And then he took a step back and he asked do you guys know what the word worthy means? And they all shook their heads no. And he's asking, he's like, have you heard of the word? Do you know what it means? And not one could raise their hand and provide it, provide the definition for it. So then he asked them, do you guys know what worthless means? And every single child in that room raised their hands. And this is what our third graders, you're talking 7, 8, 9 years old. You learn the definition of worthless from the moment you are a toddler, from the moment you're coming to this world. But you're not taught the the opposite of that, of actually being worthy and deserving of opportunities and growing up to being, anything that you can be. I mean, you're talking Jose sitting right here with us. He now stands here with an associate's degree at, you said 47, right, Jose?
48.
48. So, but the reality is he wanted to be an engineer. He wanted to build things and use his strengths and grow up to be this amazing, successful individual using his strengths. And when he sought out to do that, so many stops were put in his way. And the one place that opened the doors helped them invest his strengths just in a negative way, in an absolute negative way.
For Abby, for me, I think I learned to celebrate everything when before nothing was a celebration. Like, I got my cap, so I have to call El Tri-C. I didn't get my gown yet. And when I got my cap the other day in the mail, I put it on. I was running around my recovery house like I just won $1 million. I learned to celebrate my associate's degree because I would have never thought I would have got this. Like, I've learned to make things attainable to me. Like, I learned not to settle because it's about mine. It's about me. And you're going to get everything you want if you don't settle. But not settling also means you have to learn to compromise. And if you go to one place and they shut you down, you go to another place. You don't take no. We learn to take no. And it's yes, 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 yes. And I've been like, my mentality before was like, I've lost better. And that's the wrong thing, because I settled for I lost better instead of saying, okay, how can I get better? How can I do better? And where is better? What is better? And like Cynthia tells me, I have a team of lioness around here. Tara, you, her, Marianelle. I have females that, or let me stop calling them that. I have people around me that will bust me upside the head and tell me like, you're messing up. And where before the streets applauded everything I did. And now it's like, no, you're wrong. Before, no one would tell me no. How dare they tell me no? In the prison system, they wouldn't tell me no. I did what I wanted because that's what I wanted to do. But now I'm learning to take direction. Like, in recovery, we learned that our life became unmanageable. So I've learned that I don't know how to manage my life. So I allow others to guide me. And I'm going to fight with you because I know how to fight. And you might be wrong, but most times you're right. But I'm going to fight with you because you have to you just can't smack me upside the head and not tell me why you smacked me. And this is to anyone who comes out of prison, anyone who's in recovery. You can't go in there and rub my back and tell me everything's going to be okay because I'm going to eat you alive. I'm going to swallow you whole.
We're talking about eating people alive.
But if you bust me upside the head and you tell me why you hit me, I can understand it. Tell me what I did wrong and explain to me. And this goes for anybody in recovery. This is what we want. We need someone that's going to be firm. Do not baby me. Because we learned how to survive out on the street and we will eat you. But if you tell me I was wrong, explain to me what I did wrong. Just don't tell me I'm wrong because I don't understand. I don't know why you hit me. I don't know why you yelled at me. It's the same way with a child. We can't continue to tell them that they're wrong and not tell them why they were wrong. You have to sit down and break it down. And it's, like I said, it goes for the people in recovery and reentry. Tell us why. Because a lot of our mental states, it's not there. It never developed because being under the influence of drugs. I'm wrong. Tell me why. I'm going to argue with you because that's what I know how to do. That's what I was taught to do. We were taught to fight, but the problem is we were not taught to fight for the right causes. And now, when I seen the marches in the street and I seen people actually united for something that was plausible, something that was tangible, something that I believed in, it was beautiful. And like in prison, the problem is people want to fight over a sandwich. Oh, they took this off the menu. It's like, no, they closed the library and they took the books out. How about that? No, we don't have education for you. How about that? You want to fight over, they're not selling us Snickers and cakes no more? Are you serious?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so, so much for that.
Yes. Thank you both. I really want to extend like a warm thanks and gratitude to both of you, Yamelisa and Jose. This has been one of the most creative webinars so far and really exciting. I think everyone had such an amazing experience just kind of hearing the real talk of it all, right? And I feel like that has just been really rewarding. The dialogue that's come out of this. There are a lot of students who are on the call, and I can tell that they've been really enriched by their learning. They've been jumping in, reaching out. They've been putting a lot of questions in the Zoom chat. So I know that the discussion doesn't necessarily end here. Unfortunately, we do have to cut it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the poll live so you guys can go ahead and put your responses in the poll. Let us know what your feedback so far. This is the third week that we've been doing it, so try to think about today and also think about the other webinars if you'd like, if you've attended any. But I also want to make sure that we have a way to continue the dialogue. So Jose and Yamelisa, I hope you guys are okay with me sending you the contact information for the students or vice versa so they can follow up with you all. And then also emailing you questions that may come out of just future conversation that people may want to have, because the work that you're doing is so important and your lived experience is so important.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, all right, I want to announce too what next week. I'm trying to mute my background. I have to like hold my hand up to mute them. They're just back there talking. I'm sorry. So I want to announce next week's webinar too, so that you all can stay tuned. Next week, we're going to be doing youth violence as a contagious disease, root causes and cures. The presenters are going to be Pa Simpson, Director of Zero Youth Violence, and also QB Macbala, community member. So we look forward to that. And thank you guys for voting on the poll. Okay, this looks good so far. All right, and any final remarks from you two?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, not just to you, to the students, to everyone that attended. The honor to sit with Jose and have this conversation live, and it be real, it be unscripted, because that was the best way to do it. You know, you're gonna get our story as it is, because that's what people deserve to hear. So thank you.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. Everybody be well. Take care of yourself. Bye.